Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel today. Thank you for stopping right here on my space. So in today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you all a detailed process from the drafting to the cutting and the sewing of this beautiful shift gown which you see right here. So it has a stylish neckline. It's actually a monostrap neckline, and it has these fringes or these frills. So I'm going to show you all how to go about all of this, and also how to fix your fringes or your frills so that you don't get to see the top part of it, and to achieve a neat finishing at the end of the day. I know you love what you see, and without much ado, I'll just get started with what we have for today. So to get started, you need to assemble all of your working piece and materials and your tools. And right here are the materials I'll be working with to achieve this beautiful gown. The number one I have right here is my net, which is black in color and is very transparent, as you can see right here. And it also has these spots on them. So I just love the spots and the design. So the second I have right here is my frills. So some call it fringes as well. So this is what I have, is about 2 yards here. So I got a yard for about 800. This is the short one. It has a long and the short one, so I'll keep that aside. And for this, my fabric, you can see right here, is actually a color combination of blue and black print. It's an African print fabric, and I have also 2 yards of this my fabric right here. So I'm going to get started now by spreading it out so that I can fold it into two. So before I went ahead to fold, I measured out my hip circumference divided by 4 and added extra 3 inches to this so that I can know the amount of inches I can fold in. Okay, so when I achieve my desired inches, I went ahead to maintain that and now straighten this part. You can also go ahead to iron this to achieve a very flat effect on your fabric. Okay, so now, having gotten what I want right here, I'm going to start by marking a line at the top part of this my fabric, and all my measurements are going to be starting from that line where I marked with my yellow chalk. So on that line now, which is my shoulder line, I divided my shoulder into two. I got 7 inches. I added extra half inch for joining allowance to my sleeve. Altogether I marked 7.5 inches. Then from that 7.5 inches, I came down by 8 inches and now connected these 2 points together and now extended that my 8 inches point. So on this line now, which is my armhole, I divided it into 2 equal halves and I got the middle, and on that middle I went in by half of an inch. Now on this other line, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. So my bust circumference divided by 4 is 9.5 inches, and I went ahead to mark it on this line. So I need an ease on this gown because I don't want it to be like very fitted, so I added half inch for ease. Okay, please, for ease. So after getting my bust, the quarter of my bust circumference of 9.5, I added extra half inch for ease. So now I created my armhole from my shoulder all the way down to my chest line. So my neck width I marked 3 inches, and for my neck depth I went ahead to mark 4 inches. So I'm going to create this into a block form first before I go ahead to use my curve rule to now create my round neckline, because it's actually a round neckline that I'm using for this particular gown. Okay, so now I've created my round neckline. The next thing is to include my other body measurement. So I'll mark my half length of 15.5 inches right there, sorry, 16 inches right there, and I'm going to mark my hip length of 24 inches from my shoulder. Okay, so remember that I placed my tape on that my shoulder line, which is this first line I have at the top part of this my fabric. So now I'm going to get my waist circumference and divide it by 4. So I had around 8 inches, and I'm going to add extra half of an inch to that. Remember, 8 inches is a quarter of my waist circumference, then half inch is for ease. So I repeated the same thing for my hip. I divided my hip circumference by 4 and added extra half of an inch for ease. So I did it for all of these lines which I have right here. So just take note of that. And I now went ahead to connect all of these points right here, as you can see. So the next I'm going to get is the length of this my gown, right? So from that my hip, I need to take the measurement. So my hip length from my shoulder is 24 inches. I place that 24 inches on that line. to get the length of my gown of 41 inches plus extra 1 inch for hemming allowance, and altogether I marked 42 inches as the length of this my gown. So I went ahead to measure what I have on my hip right there, and whatever I have, which is 11 inches, I went ahead to subtract 1.5 inches from that, and I'm just going to mark 9.5 inches on the full length of this my gown. So I'm now going to make a connection from my hip line all the way to the very end or the base of this my gown. So the next thing for me is to actually take my darts. So on that line, which is my half length, I'm just going to divide my nipple to nipple point into 2, and my nipple to nipple point divided into 2 is 3.5 inches, and I made a point right there on that my half length line. So from that line I went up by 5 inches, and I also came down by 5 inches as well on that line. So I'm going to use my ruler now to connect these points into a straight line. So having done this now, I'll come to that line, which is my half length, and at both sides I'm just going to mark half of an inch away from that line, and now connect it this way into the 5 inches I marked upward and downward. So you can see what I have right now. So after this now, of course that we need to replace our dart intake. So I'll go ahead now to measure out what I have right there, which is 1 inch. I went ahead to replace it exactly on my waistline. So that's exactly where it should be replaced. Okay, so now I always replace my dart the exact way and shape it was taken. This will give you a better and proper fitting. Okay, so now I went ahead now to replace my darts, and you can see the ruler and the way I did it, so please just do the same thing. Okay, so having done all of these, I've not added my sewing and my stitching allowance, which I've gone ahead now to do, and my stitching allowance right here is 1 inch. So for me, while making my dress, I usually add a stitching allowance of 1 inch, but when I'm making that of a client, I usually go with 1.5 inches just in case. Okay, so that is just basically it, and after that now go ahead and cut out exactly the way I have drafted. So I cut off the sides, I cut off the armhole, and I almost forgot my shoulder slant or my shoulder slope, so I just came up by ½ inch from my neck width and connected it to the other part of my shoulder in a slanting manner, and I have my shoulder slope. Please don't forget to do that. Okay, so after that I'll get the remnants of my fabric and also fold it into 2. By the time I do this, I'll get the front part of my gown and place it on this second fabric, but I'm not going to place from the folded edge of this my folded fabric. I'll leave about 1 inch space. As you can see, I'm measuring right there, so I left about 1 inch space, and from that 1 inch I placed this my my front part of my gown. So I extended the waistline to that of this my fabric underneath, and from that line I went up by 5 inches and also came down by 5 inches, as you can see. Then from that 5 inches beneath, I went ahead to mark 8 inches. So this is just for our zipper allowance and also to create our zipper slope and also our butt curve. All right, so now from that my waistline on the back part of my gown, I came out by ½ of an inch. Now I'm going to slightly connect it to this 5 inches upward. Okay, so I'll come to this line under my waistline right there, so I'll also mark ½ of an inch this way, and I'll also connect this line to meet that point, so you can see what I'm doing right here. So now for the other line as well, I'm pointing, I'm also going to mark ½ of an inch away from my fabric this way, and I'm now going to use my curve rule to now make this last connection. I hope it's clear enough to you and it's not confusing at all. If you are slightly confused, you can go ahead and take it up again, because I wasn't fast in giving this explanation. I took my time. So when I now made this final connection, I now extended the line all the way to the end or the hem of this my gown, just as you can see right here. So this is to avoid bulginess at the back of your sleeve. Sorry, at the back of your dress. Okay. So I went ahead now to shape the sides, to cut out the sides exactly the way it is. I'll cut the armhole, and I'll also maintain the same neckline actually. Okay. So now before I remove the front part of this my gown, I have to use my tracing wheel to trace out these darts. Apply enough pressure so that you can have these prints from your tracing wheel at the back part of your gown. Okay, so this will help you to just freely stitch in your darts without confusion. Okay, so you can see how I'm applying pressure to make sure that all these prints, I get it on the other side of my fabric. So this was my camera, but in real life it was very visible and clear. Okay, so after I achieved that, I also went ahead to make it more visible on the back part of my gown. So when I must have done all of that, I went ahead to now cut out these lines which I already marked on the back part of my gown. So now back to the front part, we're trying to create a monostrap neckline. Okay, so this one is quite a bit different, right? So now on the shoulder, I went ahead to mark 2 inches. Okay, so I went ahead to mark 2 inches on one part of the shoulder like this. Now for the other side of the shoulder, I came down by 6 inches. So it all depends on your desired neck depth. All right, so just continue watching, you understand what I mean. So now I'm going to connect these 2 inches this way using my free hand to these 6 inches. So I'm going to cut out exactly the same way I have curved or connected this. All right, so I'll cut it out now this way, and you can see what I have. So while cutting on my nets, I'm not going to fold my fabric. I'm just going to spread it out this way, as you can see, and I'll go ahead to pin my fabric to my nets. Okay, so you're going to cut out just this way, and at the base there, you are just going to leave 3/4 to 1/2 inch for joining allowance, because we don't have joining allowance on our main fabric, so you need to leave about 3/4 of an inch at the base. So on the neckline, you should also do the same thing, but on the shoulder at that top part, you shouldn't. It should be the same thing with the fabric. Okay, so this is what it's going to be like, and I'll now remove my fabric from my net, and this is what I have. So now what I'm going to do now is firstly to stitch this net to my fabric. So I'm going to place it this way on top of my fabric, and I'm going to pin according to the way the shape is and the way it went. So I'm going to pin this all around till I get to the shoulder, the other part of the shoulder, all around this way.
There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you'd notice too. Sneaking looks up and down from across the room, and damn, what a hell of a view. I feel good, you look great, I like you, I can't wait. A first time, a first date.
So after pinning, if you raise it up, this is what it's going to look like. So you just stitch using 1/2 inch, and I also stitch in my darts, and also do the same thing for the back part of my gown, and I'll also pipe the neckline for both the front and for the back part of my gown. So guys, I've done all of that. So when you stitch your net and your fabric, please do top stitch on your main fabric, okay, so that it will be flat. You can see at that point it's flat this way, so it doesn't show on your net because our net is transparent. So I've also piped the neckline and stitched in my dart for the front part of my gown and the back part as well. And the next thing is for me to start joining my gown, the front part and the back part. So firstly, I pinned the front part of my gown and the back part on the shoulder. This is for one side, and after pinning the shoulder, I'll go ahead and also arrange the sides properly and also pin it as well. So when I pin the sides of this my gown, I'll go ahead now to mark my stitching allowance of 1 inch, which was what I marked for or as my stitching allowance. So I marked it to the very end of this my gown, and following that shape, I'm just going to stitch it down. But you need to leave about 1/2 inch before you start stitching down, so that when you fix your sleeve, you don't have to end up losing some parts. Okay, So when I now did this, and I also fixed my zipper to this, I fixed the front part and the back part, I've stitched the sides and the shoulder, and also went ahead to also fix my zip. Okay, so this is what I have, and this is what it's looking like. Please pardon me, I'm here to iron this particular gown. Okay, so this is what I have. I fixed an invisible open zip, the big head, that's what I call it. So next is to fix this our fringes or our frills. So I just subtracted extra half of an inch from the length of my gown, and on that zipper part I went ahead to open it slightly a bit, because I will start fixing this my fringes to it. So you have to place your fringes at the top part of, on the wrong side of your, or sorry, on the right side of your fabric, just this way. So you can actually go ahead to use your office pin to pin this down, just the same way I did right here. So you have to stitch it all the way around at the hem of your gown, all around, so you get to the other side. Okay, so by the time I did this is what I have. While stitching, ensure that these fringes or these frills, you don't stitch on top of it, just only on that part that has this, I don't know, just on that upper part. Okay, so when you are now done, if you turn your fringes to face downward, this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so I'll now flip this my fabric to the wrong side, so that I'll show you all how to take that rough part, like the upper part of these fringes inside, so that people don't get to see, they only see the fringes or the frills. Okay, so you now have to take this inside this way, you see, more like normal way you hem your dress. You just fold it in this way. Okay, so while you are stitching, you're going to ensure that you don't stitch on these ropes. Let me just use the rope. You don't stitch on these threads, these fringes, these ropes. Just stitch alone on top this way. Okay, so you're just going to stitch only on top of this piece, just this thing right here, just on top of it. That's the only thing you're supposed to stitch on. Don't stitch on those ropes. Okay, and at the end of the day, you fix any sleeve of your choice. And I went ahead to also use these frills or these fringes on the hem of my sleeve, and this is what it looks like. It's fitted on me, but it's not big, right, as you can see right here. So this is exactly how I wanted it to be. So you now go ahead and now iron it out, and this is what you're going to have. I was super excited with this dress. It's very free and it's giving these rich auntie vibes on a low key. So thank you all so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you found this tutorial helpful. I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.